All right, cool. All right, I'll play the intro. I'll get out of here, and then you guys just do your thing.
Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. What a glorious day it is on Love of the Stars. Zach Wolchuk alongside Eric Chiafalo. The Super Bowl winning scout Brian Broaddus, well, he is at a wedding. Wow, it is rare that Brian is missing 2 podcasts back-to-back. But we have the one and only Nick Harris, one of our favorites. We go way, way back. Nick grinding away in the high school football beat, and now one of the best beat writers for the Dallas Cowboys and really just for all DFW sports. Nick, how the hell are you, man? Thanks for giving us some time, bro.
Hey, thank you, fellas. The respect and love is mutual. I love that I've become good friends with the station, and that's all credit to you two, going all the way back to Friday Night Stars days and getting ingrained and back in 2018, 2019, and now here we are 6 years later, and we're all covering the same thing still. So life is funny like that.
It's pretty badass, man. It really is how it comes full circle. But I got to pick your brain on this football team. You are one of the most well-respected football minds personally. I know to Eric and myself. So takeaways from minicamp as we are now departing, and we don't get anything else until training camp. Shotty was a little bit emotional yesterday. But, I mean, when it comes to position battles, maybe something that stood out to you in a surprising way, was there anything that just comes front of mind for you, Nick?
Yeah, so the situation with OTAs and minicamp is it's kind of tough to figure out exactly if there is a position battle or if there is any guy who looks better or feels better just because of the nature of the practices. It's underwear Olympics, and so the thing that I try to look for the most is where guys are lining up, who they're lining up with. Are they first team, second team? Oh, you see Bobby just popping in there. That was scary. That was terrifying, honestly. But talking about those things, I think the one thing that surprised me coming out of minicamp is the emergence of Brevin Spanford. We saw it in OTAs. We saw it in minicamp. This is a guy who's getting a ton of work with the first team. And when I put out a couple quotes from Shotty yesterday, which I'll get to, about the tight ends, I think people were taking this as an indictment on Jake Ferguson. I don't think that's the case. I think this is an indictment on Luke Schoonmaker. And if Brian Schottenheimer wants to run 12 personnel, I think it's leaning towards that 12 being Jake Ferguson and Brevin Spanford. 6'7", 270 pounds, undrafted guy in 2024 out of Minnesota. Wasn't asked to do a whole lot in the receiving game with the Golden Gophers. Went to the Senior Bowl last year and really balled out and had a great weekend in the receiving game. Somehow went undrafted. I was surprised when he did. I think that was something we discussed on the draft show. And he was the highest paid undrafted free agent that the Cowboys signed last year. He made the 53-man roster. And again, wasn't asked to do a whole lot in the receiving game. But as we've seen in minicamp, as we've seen in OTAs, they are feeding him the ball. He has added 7-8 pounds of muscle mass, according to Schottenheimer. He said he's one of the guys that is really starting to take that year 2 jump. And he said he's already made that jump, and it's really going to help him when this training camp begins. And he said this tight end battle is going to be really fun for us coaches and for the fans to watch when we get out to Oxnard. So that's going to be a fascinating one for me to track as we get closer.
Yeah, it feels like they're going to take a heavy account into who can really block at the tight end position as well, with the amount of different running stuff that they want to do, bringing in the new coaching staff and the way they want to attack people. It feels like, do you expect to see? Feels like the NFL is heading in that direction where you're seeing more and more heavy personnel offensively. And you have the Turpin, you have the Mingos and the Tolberts of the world as wide receiver 3, but I don't know, looking at the offense, I could see them wanting to go 12 personnel at a pretty respectful rate.
And Dak loves the tight ends, and he was complimentary of Brevin Spanford as well. And if that's a guy that he can get going with in the receiving game opposite of Jake Ferguson, that only opens up his options. We talk about George Pickens being that final piece that kind of opens everything else up. I think if you get the tight ends involved to the level that they were in 2023 or to the level when Dak and Guyton were really rolling early in Prescott's career, then that's going to open up so much more as well. So, the passing game, it's definitely on the up trajectory. You talk about adding Pickens. You talk about the emergence of a couple of guys. I like where this is headed from a passing game standpoint for sure.
Nick, when it comes to a guy like John Stevens, right, he was kind of our training camp darling the last couple of years, and fans get really excited, and then he gets hurt You have an emergence here with Brevin Spanford. Brian's kind of nitpicked a little bit, and rightly so. Like maybe the receiving aspect isn't as natural or comfortable for him. Like he doesn't look as comfortable catching the football. I don't know if he improved or if you agree or disagree with that. But I mean, John Stevens heading into training camp, is this a guy that has a chance to still make the roster, or is he kind of phased out here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they have Princeton Fant, who made the 53-man towards the end of the year last year when they had a couple injuries in the room. That's a guy that they do like a lot in some blocking situations. And if you look at it from Brevin Spanford's perspective, he's got a safe spot now. Jake Ferguson has a safe spot. Does Luke Schoonmaker have a safe spot? Maybe that's where we start asking once we get to the third and fourth options in those tight end rooms. How does that look for John Stevens? The biggest struggle with Stevens is even if he does have an awesome training camp, it's going to be the question, okay, can he stay healthy? And you wonder if that question alone will hurt him on 53 cut day.
So obviously big names here when it comes to the Cowboys. I'm curious just overall, Dak Prescott, health-wise, physically, sharpness, the whole deal. How did you evaluate his camp?
Yeah, looked really good. And if I had to look back, hindsight being 2020, and seeing how much he participated in OTAs and minicamp, it's surprising how much he was involved. And it didn't feel like there was a limited workload for him at all at any point during the offseason program. And even within a play, I don't feel like there was any communication as far as, hey, Dak, just stay in the pocket and throw. We're just trying to get you back with routes on air. I mean, he was rolling outside of the pocket. He was working off script with guys. I mean, he was treating it like he did a normal offseason program. And I asked him yesterday, after getting through the offseason program now, how are you feeling? You feeling good? He's like, yeah, absolutely. A little sore a couple days, but that's just normal getting back on the field. But I'm ready to go. So he should be a full go at training camp. And it's going to be a lot of fun seeing him work with these new weapons out there.
I want to talk offensive line, and obviously, we're part of the draft show, the Tyler Booker selection we covered in depth. But maybe this was tough to judge because it seemed like Shoddy was mixing and matching and putting a lot of guys in different roles. And I don't know if that's something that is actually going to happen, possibly. Like if somebody goes down, that is who the number 2 would be. But where do you think this offensive line is right now? And one thing Eric and I were talking about in our previous episode is, do they now have a surplus maybe when it comes to interior offensive linemen, to where if they needed a corner, if they needed a defensive tackle, they could kind of look at other rosters and maybe flip a guy to try and add to where they're weak?
Yeah, and I think that's a possibility with any surplus, absolutely. And that was something we talked about, I think, last year too, with interior guys. Is there an opportunity here potentially? But at least under McCarthy, and I've gotten similar feelings under Schottenheimer based on the same questions we had for him this time last year. They like having the surplus of offensive linemen. They want as many bodies as possible there. But looking at OTAs, minicamp, again, tough to tell how much these guys are separating from each other on the depth chart in these kind of environments, just because they can't do a whole lot. And I asked Tyler Smith about this on Wednesday. I was like, this time of the year, like, what do you think your coaches are looking for from you? Like, obviously you can't be putting guys in the dirt like you're normally used to doing on a Sunday or even on a Thursday during the season. So, what is the biggest thing y'all try to harp on at this time? He's like, it's being intentional. It's being really technical, and like we can go through the motions of our technique without actually applying power to it. So it's the little things, and we harp on the little things as much as possible right now. He's like, in pre-snap, there's a lot of upper body, and it's a lot of communication. And then post-snap, it's what you can do with your footwork, and how are you getting out, and how are you adjusting, and how are you creating depth between you and your assignments. So those little things are still being looked at, and Tyler Booker is, it's A's across the board for what he's accomplished so far. They really like what he's brought to the table. And then from an interior perspective, there's a lot of guys behind him that will be ready to go in case A, he gets hurt, or if B, he has some more learning to do when we get around to training camp.
Where's your Tyler Guyton optimism right now?
That's a great question, Eric. And that's what I've been kind of thinking on myself over these last couple of weeks. I'll preface with this. And, last year at this same time, we had a lot of similar questions about Monty Smith, right? And being a former first-round pick, didn't have a great rookie year. And, was he going to make that jump? And I think the difference between Tyler Guyton right now and Mozzie Smith last year, Mozzie Smith right now, is there's a lot of intention, there's a lot of purpose, and there's a lot of application this offseason towards, okay, I know this was a problem. How do I do this to make that one thing better? How do I do this to make that other thing better? For example, I mean, from his diet, working with Tyler Smith, working with the nutritionists every single day, that was something he didn't necessarily do last year when he first got into the building. Having a full offseason, being in the weight room, and being able to apply that to his offseason training, that's been huge for him. Brian Schottenheimer said that he was the first guy back in the facility when they allowed players back in. I believe that was probably early April. This is a guy that they are really confident can take that next jump. Now, you could do everything possible off the field to make sure that you're ready to go whenever the lights do come on, but it really is about applying it on the field, and that's going to be the biggest thing for him. If you had to put my optimism on it right now, I'd probably say it's at about a 6, which I don't take that as a bad 6. I think that's a good 6, and
okay.
We'll see where it goes, but they need him. And it's funny because I think if you look at 2 players on the roster that are probably the biggest wild cards, it is Mozzie Smith and Tyler Guyton. Those 2 guys, they need them. They need Tyler Guyton to be able to protect that left side for Dak Prescott. They need Mozzie Smith to help stop the run. And if they can't get those 2 guys to step up and do that, then it's going to be, what veteran is the cheapest option that can allow them to move forward and not have any issues in those areas.
Thursday night opener against the Eagles. Tyler Guyton's given up 2 sacks. He's got a couple of penalties. Cowboys have to make a change.
Oof.
You think Awesome Richards goes in, or is it Tyler Smith kicking out to left? How do you think they remedy that?
Yeah, I think based on what we've seen in OTAs and minicamp so far, I think they are trying to prepare to never kick Tyler Smith out to left tackle ever again. And the reason I say that is we've seen so many different left tackles working with the 2s, from Awesome Richards to Hakeem Adeniji to Nathan Thomas has gotten to work with the 2s at left tackle. They are throwing a lot of different options out there. And I think it's more so like, hey, let's get these guys comfortable. And then once we get to training camp, really figure out who that second option will be. I still think it'll be Awesome Richards. And speaking about guys that look a lot better coming into this offseason program, Awesome Richards looks great. And he had some bad weight last year in his upper body. He just kind of looked a little like heavy at times, especially like upper chest to upward. But he looks really good now, and you can see that translating to his footwork mobility and how quick he's looked at either tackle position. They've worked him at both left and right tackle. I think that would probably be your first option.
Okay, let's talk about the receivers for a second. Of course, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, we know they've been making some plays. Who else has stood out to you in terms of the tertiary receivers on the offense?
Yeah, Jalen Tolbert's had a couple of strong days during the offseason program. I wouldn't say it's anything that we didn't expect from Jalen Tolbert, but there were a couple of touchdown grabs where there was one specifically back of the end zone. He went up over Jack Sanborn and kind of just plucked it off of his helmet on a throw from Dak. I believe it was a 3rd and goal situation, and looked really strong there. A couple of times where he was targeted in the short to intermediate game, you start to see his route running improve just a little bit. Mingo, we've seen a lot of Jonathan Mingo with the 2s, working with Joe Milton. That's been a connection that's been really strong so far. But the tertiary receivers, like you mentioned, Eric, that's going to be a fascinating one to follow in Oxnard, because you expect to get a pretty damn good George Pickens. You expect to get the CeeDee Lamb that you've been used to seeing. But if they can get either Jalen Tolbert or Jonathan Mingo to step up and really be that 3rd receiving option that is a safe, good option that can open up the game for those 2, this is going to be a deadly passing attack, man. And I have confidence in this passing attack right now. And I think with a full offseason, with a completely new system for Jonathan Mingo, I think it's a good thing. I talked to him earlier in the offseason, and he just never felt comfortable last year. And when he got in the building, he didn't feel like there was a lot of knowledge and application being focused on him, even though he was a midseason addition. It was kind of a situation where he was thrown onto the roster, and they're like, all right, figure it out, big dog. And he didn't. And I think coming into this year, he's really grown close with Joe Milton. Those 2 have done a lot of things outside of the building, and I think it's going to end up helping his overall development. Again, am I saying that he's maybe going to become like this 1,000-yard receiver? No, I just think he is very capable of being the wide receiver 3.
You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star Telegram, hanging out with us here on Love of the Star. You brought up Joe Milton. If the Cowboys, let's say they get into week 4, unfortunately you lose Dak Prescott for an unforeseen amount of time. You can go ahead and if we're playing the game, maybe it's 3 or 4 weeks, maybe it's a season. Who do you think comes in and starts at backup?
At quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
That would be Joe Milton. Yeah, that would be Joe Milton. And I think there's a lot of confidence there in Joe Milton.
Okay, good. Because we were wondering, like Will Greer, there's been a mix of opinion there. Like, is Will Greer the guy that they view as the best to maybe win them a game right now? But Joe Milton, I think from all the fan perspective, that's who they'd like to see. That's who we'd want to see. Let's have some fun with this.
And I think that's who the coaches in front office would like to see too. I mean, they brought this guy in to be the backup, A, and B, be developed for situations just like this. So if that were to happen, I would be shocked if it's not Milton. I think Greer is probably safely the QB3 on this roster.
What have you liked about the way that they have sort of deployed Pickens and Lamb together and just that dynamic? I just feel like that's going to give defenses some serious headaches.
Yeah, it's been fun seeing how they've been thrown out alignment-wise. And Schottenheimer he's definitely toying with a few things. Like there's some things I think we saw during OTAs and minicamp that we probably won't see during the season, much less even during training camp probably. But the things that have worked and the things that, everyone kind of looks around after a play and they're like, yeah, let's make sure and write that one down. There's been some fun stuff. For me specifically, I'll just point out one play. I believe this was from Tuesday's availability. They had George Pickens lined up out wide, and they had Jonathan Mingo inside of him, and then CeeDee Lamb in the slot. And the route trees and route concepts that they were able to work out with those 3 on the field on the same side of the ball, it opened up a lot. And I could kind of see the vision of where Schottenheimer's potentially trying to go with those two. Like they don't have to be on opposite sides of the ball. You can try to isolate a slot corner with CeeDee Lamb, while also working your number 1 corner against George Pickens. I mean, there's going to be a lot of different things that they can toy around with. I mean, it's like having a bunch of Legos and you're trying to figure out how to put them together. I mean, it's going to be some fun stuff that Schottenheimer has available to him. You just hope they are multiple enough to be able to maximize their production. And if they're not multiple enough, then we're going to see offenses like we saw with Mike McCarthy. And I think eventually that was the downfall, is even when Brandon Cooks was healthy, they were very predictable. And it led to a dip in production when Dak Prescott was on the field, and then certainly whenever he came out of the game.
What are your thoughts on just the early returns on the new staff? I know Eric and I were pretty pumped. I think a lot of us were, like how Shoddy was putting this together. It didn't seem like he was just going out and hiring buddies of his. You've got a lot of guys coming up from the college ranks, right? So I don't know if you could even tell a difference just from OTAs and minicamp, just like the position groups and how the coaches were working with players.
Yeah, energy. That's the first thing that pops to mind when talking about this entire coaching staff. I mean, during warm-ups, you guys will see it in Oxnard. Every single coach is going up and down the warm-up lines, dapping up players, slapping them on the helmet. And it's not position specific. You'll see Connor Riley doing it with Deron Bland, and you'll see David Overstreet doing it with Jaden Blue. I mean, it's all over the place. And that's an environment that Schottenheimer's trying to create. And he was asked about that on Thursday, and his final availability is, obviously you're trying to develop these players, but how about this coaching staff so far? How have they, kind of responded to what you're trying to implement? And he's loved every bit of it. And he said he's gotten a great buy-in from the coaches, and they have disagreements, but they're able to talk it through, and they're able to, figure out, the best solutions to certain problems. And he said it's in mid-season form almost. So I do like how he put the staff together. I think there's probably only 1 or 2 staff members that I'd look at and be like, I think he could have done better there. But regardless, it's all coming together pretty solidly. And got to shout out Clayton Adams if we're talking about this staff, just because I think there's going to be a lot of influence to what he's bringing from Arizona, not only in the offense, but on the offensive line specifically. You talk about Tyler Guyton. That's going to be a huge guy to have in his corner is Clayton Adams. Talk about Terrence Steele. I believe this coaching staff change benefits no other player more than Terrence Steele. He's going to be able to be in a system where it allows him to work with a guy that understands what he's trying to do. And Clayton Adams is certainly that type of guy.
Looking at it defensively, the Eberflus stuff, what have you seen from this defense? And from a secondary standpoint, where do you, I mean, Deron Bland seems like he's working in the slot quite a bit. Are you as excited about this Kyer Elam stuff? It seems like he's been making some plays from time to time throughout OTAs and whatnot. Where are you at with this defense right now?
Yeah, again, and I have to preface once again, underwear Olympics here. But
Sure.
with Kyer Elam, he has registered a pass breakup in every single media availability that we've had during the offseason program. And that's tough to do because there's only so much physicality you can throw around during these settings. And if corners are not allowed to jam or press against guys in coverage and he's still getting pass breakups, I think that's pretty impressive. And we'll see how it translates when the pads come on. That's going to be a much different animal for him. And there's a very good chance we get out to Oxnard and he's just getting cooked by, Jalen Cropper. And then, we're looking around like, damn, this team needs a corner. But I would say as of right now, based on what he's done through the offseason program, he does look like a starting caliber corner on the outside. And it's going to give them a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom to allow Trayvon Diggs and Savone Revel to really heal up and get ready to go. Shoot, and it might be a situation where they might not even have to call on Savone Revel in 2025, and they allow him to get healthy, get onto the field as a rookie in some situational opportunities, and then going into his second year, thrust him into a starting role potentially. But I've liked what I've seen from Kyer Elam. Overall, the secondary, man, it's been a musical chairs kind of. We've seen Kyer Elam on the outside. We've seen Deron Bland on the outside, on the inside. Same with Israel Mukuamu, outside, inside. I mean, they have thrown just about every single body that they have at cornerback at both positions to see what will work. And it's very much a fluid process to where those guys will potentially be starting. And it's been the same thing with the safety position. Donovan Wilson has been out during team periods during the offseason program. So it's been a lot of Wanye Thomas. Malik Hooker missed a couple of days. So we got to see undrafted signee Elijah Clark out of Syracuse get some work with the ones. So it's going to be a fluid process all the way around for the secondary. But, man, you hope that group is healthy when week one comes around, because if they are not, you better get ready to score 45.
Is corner the position that you think we're going to get out there? And to your point, I guess health will go a long way. But they bring in like Robert Rochelle, Jerry Jacobs yesterday, among some other players. You had Gilmore, who came into the facility. Apparently that was not like a workout or anything, but that name's been hovering around. Jair Alexander. Like, do you see them inevitably making a move at some point to add another corner?
Before camp, no. I think they're going to roll into camp with what they got. And I could say that across the board. There might be, there might be a UFL addition here or there. But if we're talking, hey, let's make an addition that can threaten the starting job of a position, I don't think an addition gets made like that until halfway or after camp. And then I would probably only be looking at one tech. And if corner is not looking great, then corner would certainly be another option in that bag. But I think going into camp, talking to people over there, they feel comfortable with where their roster is at. They want to see the competition that these guys will bring to Oxnard. And, we'll see. I think all three of us, though, could look at each other and probably point at 2 or 3 position groups where you're like, yeah, they could use some help there, man. Mm-hmm. And we might end up being right when the end of August comes around. Or maybe they surprise us, and when the end of August comes around, they have some safe starters there.
Nick, assuming the Micah Parsons stuff gets handled, and obviously would love to get your intel on that particular situation with the contract and everything, but it seems like the strength of this defense is going to be the pass rush.
Absolutely, man. This the pass rush weapons that are available to Matt Eberflus are going to be the biggest benefit to him. And if you look at the problems that this team has currently today on June 13th as we're recording, you look at the middle of the defense, the spine of the defense, one tech. I don't feel great about the linebacking core from a run defense perspective, just because I've seen what Kenneth Murray has done there. I've seen what Jack Sanborn has done there, and it's average at best at times, unless there's a really big difference as far as application in that second level towards stopping the run. I'm taking for what has already been proven, and those two guys haven't been elite run defenders by any means. So again, looking at the issues on the defense, spine of the defense and run defense, and the health of the secondary. So they need that pass rush unit to get after the quarterback, and they have the weapons to do so. With Micah, with Dante Fowler, Donovan Ezaraku continues to get rave reviews to anyone I talk about. Was talking to a defensive assistant last week, and he said, if we didn't have the personnel that we have, this guy would be an easy starter day one. But they have such a great personnel group. And then you have a guy like Marshawn Nealand, who was a second-round pick last year that some people forgot about. Granted, he's going to be more of a run support edge type guy, but if we're talking about this edge group, he's very much factoring into that situation on early downs. So there's a lot of confidence in this edge group, man, and rightfully so. These guys look great. We saw them do the hoop drill on Wednesday, and I don't know. That's one of the favorite individual drills that I love seeing from a position group, just because you can really see the bend and explosion out of these guys. And Dante Fowler and Donovan Ezaraku looked great in that drill. I mean, you see the bend, you see the get out, you see the explosion. Those two guys are going to be thrown into some very fun situations going into 2025 that will allow them to get after the quarterback. But, man, the way I see this defense right now, if they can't get after the quarterback in a certain game and they're just going up against two really good tackles that are keeping everybody in check, I worry about this defense for sure. That's my biggest concern on this team is if they cannot get after the quarterback in a game, how does the defense stop?
You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, wrapping up here with Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star Telegram. I had a crystal ball question I want to ask you and then a couple of health updates. One player, as we talked about the pass rush, Sam Williams. How's Sam Williams looking? This is a contract year for him. It was a bummer seeing him get hurt early on in training camp last year. But gosh, if you had Sam Williams into the mix of all the guys we were just talking about, I mean, that just even adds to just how darn good that pass rush can be.
Yeah, that's another one for sure. And if you're talking about guys that look a lot better than they did last year, Sam Williams is in that category. Upper body specifically. There's a lot of upper body strength that he's added. And he finally got on the field this past week without a brace, and he was working in individual drills in a full outfit. So we're going to see him in Oxnard, I think, as a full go, and it'll be good for him to get back out on the field. I mean, shoot, he tore his ACL before the pads even came on last year. So to see him out there when the pads come on in the second week, that'll be huge too. That's just yet another weapon, man. And if he's applied what he's done from a physical perspective in the offseason to the field, then he could be dangerous as well.
And then how early do you think Trayvon Diggs is going to be ready to go?
If I had to put a guess on it, I think they start him on IR to start the season. And so he misses those first 4 weeks. And then I would say he comes back right around week 5, week 6. That would be my guess right now. Just based on, talking to some medical people and seeing where he's at in the rehab process, that would probably be a healthy estimation for when he comes back.
And then the Nick Harris crystal ball. What happens with this Micah Parsons deal? Do we get this thing done?
It gets done. Absolutely. It's just when it's a mind-numbing topic because we all know it's going to get done. We all know it's going to, and we can all probably predict the number right now. It's just a matter of the two sides sitting at the table and getting it done. I think both sides have philosophies about sitting at the table first. To where it's kind of like an awkward, German standoff here where they're kind of looking at each other and be like, you sit down. No, you sit down. And whoever sits down first, they feel like is going to not have the leverage in the deal. We all know what the deal is going to be, I feel like. I think we can all put a pretty healthy estimation on what the number will actually be. It's only going to increase if TJ Watt gets done, if Trey Hendrickson gets done. And you would have to look at it from Jerry Jones' perspective to want to get that done, that deal done earlier than those. But I guess we'll see, man. But I think now it's probably a situation where we're going to be talking about this in Oxnard. And if you had asked me back in January, I would have expected this to be done by now. But a couple of road bumps here and there. I think the situation back in Florida where he didn't know the agent's name and he was trying to work a deal with Micah one-on-one. I think that kind of slowed the process overall. But I think it gets done in Oxnard, though. I'll say that.
Would love to get your thoughts just quickly on the status of the running back group. Anybody excite you? Sanders, Williams, Jaden Blue, Maffa. Who's getting it done?
Yeah, the rookies, they have some learning to catch up on. But I think with the veteran group, Miles Sanders has surprised me in a good way. Going into this offseason program, Miles Sanders was kind of an afterthought for me. I thought he was going to be the easy cut in this room. And, he was the Ronald Jones of a couple of years ago, or the Royce Freeman from last year, where it's just like, okay, veteran presence, show the young guys how to work and then get out of here on August 25th or whatever it was, But I think as we've seen him rotate in with the ones, he looks fresh. He looks good. I'm starting to have a little concerns with this running back room as far as, okay, is there an early down guy that you can trust to start a drive with 7-8 yards? I don't know if they have that guy. I think they have multiple receiving options, which, Schottenheimer loves those receiving backs. but I'm not sure that they have that bruiser, that guy that can get them those guaranteed yards to start a drive. I'm not sure if they have that. And so, do they go outside for that help? Maybe. I don't know. But the rookies, you would love to see them take a jump here in these next 40 days so that when they get to training camp, you can start to trust a Jaden Blue or a Phil Maffa a little bit more in some situations like that, just because I think there's a big hole there in that running back room.
Nick, you're a beast, brother. Anything else before we let you out of here? Any final thoughts before we get out there and finally get to see some pads popping in Oxnard?
Yeah, no final thoughts. I just hope you boys are ready to turn up at Rudder Room once or twice. And
always,
we're going to have to bring Broadus out there and maybe get a nice water in his system or something. I don't know what he does.
No, we're going to get that fireball going with old Broadus, get Mardi Gras Broadus making an appearance out there at the beach. That'd be nice.
You'll find me at the Wheelhouse as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll be getting comfy on them couches, baby. I'm looking forward to that, Nick.
I appreciate you, fellas. Thank you so much.
You're the best, bro. Nick Harris, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. That's Eric Chiafalo. I'm Zach Wolchuk. Until next time on Love of the Star, hugs and hand pounds, everybody. Thanks, broski.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one, bro.
You too.